Hello and welcome to the video. So this video is titled, or along the lines, why your dietitian is not going to recommend a diet to help you lose weight and regain health. So this is going to be part one, and in this part one video to a series of videos I'm going to make, I'm going to set out the foundations of why the standard model of health or healthcare is not working. Okay, and I've got this little diagram to help explain why, and I'm also going to offer you a way to actually make you healthy through diet, lose weight and regain health. So the other parts in the video, other parts in the series, depending on by the time you're watching this video, I would have made them so you can watch this video and you can go on and watch those other ones. And the series is called Escaping the Prison of the Modern Health System. Okay? So I believe we live in a prison. The modern health system is a prison. And this video, yes, a prison. And this video and the series of videos will help you break free from the prison, because you're in it and you're not guilty. Okay, you're innocent, and we're going to help you get free from the shackles of, well, the modern Western world. And health is so important. Okay, so this is the foundation. I think a very good foundation and introduction. And I have to preface, so this video is about why your dietitian is not going to help you lose weight and gain health. There are a few dietitians out there that will help you, but the standard model, most dietitians will not. Okay, so most will not. And I'm going to give you, after I've shown you what the modern system is and why your health is failing, I'm going to show you how I recommend to save your health through diet therapy, and I'll show you what foods I recommend to save your life, and then you'll be able to go and save your friends' lives, your family's lives, and the people you love. Okay? And it really is, once you've seen what I have to say, it's actually quite simple to change your life, okay? And make your life better and live a more healthy life. So let's get into it. So this, at first glance, it might seem a bit confusing, but this is what I call the standard model of healthcare. And specifically, we're talking about today dietitians. So I call this the biased system based on greed. Okay, and I'm going to show you the unbiased system in a moment, not based on greed, okay? Or at least limiting it as much as possible. So the standard model is when a student, okay, so you've been probably in education since you were, 5 or 6 in the West, and you've been building up to this moment where you graduate. Perhaps the standard model is you graduate at 18 or so, undergraduate, to the university of hopefully your choice. And you're going to spend a lot of money going to university, or most likely your parents are, or you're going to take out loans, and you're going to go to this brilliant university of your choice. Perhaps in the UK it's somewhere like Newcastle or Durham or Oxford or Cambridge, for example. Or if you're in America, it's Harvard or Stanford, perhaps, for example. And you're going to, so for example, if you're wanting to do a nutrition degree, so I'll do little arrows here. So you're a student and you're going to go to university. And in return for going to university and spending a lot of money. In return, you'll be given a degree. So I don't want to make this too messy with arrows, but you'll be given a degree. Hopefully you can see that. In return, so you give the university lots of money, and in return they give you a token of a nutrition degree. So they give you a nice bit of paper, and you have that amazing day where you graduate and it feels great. And you come away with your degree that you've worked hard for 3-4 years or however long it takes. And then once you've got your degree, you can train to become a dietitian. And then you can go out into the world and hopefully create meal plans for people that are coming to you with perhaps failing health, and they're wanting to make their lives better. They want to improve their lifestyle based on a diet, the foundations of a good, healthy diet. Now that might sound like a really nice story, and I think this is just a story, okay? And it's not based on actually good foundations. So universities, they exist to, well, we'd like to say make the world a better place with more educated people, wouldn't we? But a university, just like every other business in the world, they have to survive in the world that we see, which is based on a plutocracy. Okay, so those that have money make the rules, and those that have money have power. So universities have to be funded, for example, for their research. So this is called donors. So donors, is the pen working? These donors, they fund universities, okay? So because we're specifically talking about nutrition and health, I'm going to talk about the major donors, okay? The major donors, the biggest donors that would fund this sort of degree. So for example, if I was talking about a physics degree, it might be potentially different donors, okay? But we're focusing on health and nutrition today. So there are three major donors for well, if they were going to fund health, is the food industry, big pharma, and animal ag. So that's just short for animal agriculture. So I'll set out what a normal diet now, and I'll set out what a normal diet probably, and you probably eat like this. So for breakfast, it's probably eggs and bacon, perhaps, and maybe with a little bit of fruit and vegetables in there. So you might have some full English dinner is what? It's bacon and eggs and maybe some beans and hash browns and stuff like this. But there's lots of meat in there, isn't there? And then you might have that with a glass of dairy milk, cow's milk. And then for lunch, it's more bacon and eggs. And then tea, it's maybe steak and fish and more milk through during the day. So primarily your diet is probably based on the staples of dairy, meat, fish and eggs, most likely, if you're watching this video. And that's what most people now eat in the Western countries, for example. That's their go-to diet plan. So if you're watching this video and you live in the UK or America or in Europe, so you might have heard of the SAD diet, as they call it. That's the acronym. So that's the standard American diet, and we have the standard Western diet. And yeah, so it's bacon, eggs, meat. So this is what we call animal products. And most dietitians will also recommend to eat like this. They'll tell you to drink lots of milk, to eat lots of eggs and steak and bacon, most likely. But definitely at least eggs and milk and steak and all of these animal products. This will be a staple. So, and you've probably seen this. Most people around you and you probably potentially eat like that. So when a student is going to university, they're going to be taught from textbooks, okay? And textbooks are written when research is carried out at a university. They find out this knowledge and information about the world, and then people, professors or supposedly very bright people, they write these textbooks with the findings and knowledge that they found. But we have to, and this is very important, we have to look at where does the funding come from for research that is then written into textbooks. And for this degree in particular, for a nutrition degree, most of the time, the most powerful donors, and when I say powerful, I mean financially and politically most powerful donors, are the food industry, big pharma, and animal agriculture. So the reason why the information that you see in most textbooks is because it's now the world that we live in, the modern world that we live in. These are the major donors. So, for example, if you're going to you might choose a university because you've just seen that they've got a nice new building. So they've got a nice new wing of their building. My pen's not working. Try another pen. Bear with me. So they've just built a new, let's say they've built a new wing, so to speak, or another new building on here, another new building on here. So potentially these new buildings that have just been state-of-the-art new buildings, quite often, well, these have to be built with money, don't they? And as I've said, the most powerful industries and wealthy industries in the world that generate money in the world are these industries, particularly if they want to fund research. So, for example, the food industry might fund a university to be able to build a new building. And then in that building, they'll do new research that favours the industry that built the building for the university. So, for example, if the dairy industry has just funded in part, majorly in part, a new building, research is done, and well, what surprise, they find that milk is great for your health. So, just to pause for a moment, this is the way that the world works, okay? So this isn't I suppose it might be for most people, yes, it might seem a bit controversial, but just to break through the reality of the matrix that you're living in at the moment, this isn't a conspiracy theory, okay, sadly. And yeah, sadly, this isn't. This is how it works. Yeah. What do most of us want most in life? Money, isn't it? And imagine if you'd created billions and billions of pounds, and then you can use that to make more money, okay? Just the way of the world. But there is an answer, okay? There is an alternative, and I'll get onto that in a moment. So then in these new buildings, they carry out research, and surprise, surprise, the findings come out that if it was dairy is good for you, and you should drink as much milk as you can. And so your dietitian is therefore going to sit down with you and most likely is going to tell you to eat a diet based on foods that come from the industries that fund the universities the most. So, for example, in the food industry, it might be, well, food industry and animal agriculture is very much linked, very closely linked. So, for example, yes, milk. And I've done another video, you can check that out, explaining why dairy milk is not good for your health. And we do know this. And again, I'll get onto that in a moment, talking about the science. We do know that milk is not good for you. For example, we hear that it's good for your bones. Well, actually, no, it makes your bones weaker and it leads to potentially type 1 diabetes. It has all these links with negative health consequences, okay? So this system leads to creating a sick population, okay? So in the West, now the leading cause of death is heart disease. And then when we look at all of the secondary illnesses or comorbidities, as we call them, and if I list off some, you might have heard of them before. People you've known suffer from these. So just to list some off. So we've got heart disease. We've got cancers of the digestive tract, for example. So colon cancer is one of the most common cancers now we see, along with other digestive tract problems like we've got irritable bowels and Crohn's disease. Some people have to have parts of their intestine or their colon removed because of chronic inflammation. You've got rectal cancer, and then you have other diseases such as atherosclerosis, malignant high blood pressure. Maybe you've got bad skin and acne, constant acne and horrible oily skin, for example. You might have just things that you don't really think about that are too bad for you, like you might be constipated all the time, for example, and you might have problems with your kidney, like renal failure, for example, kidney failure or kidney issues. You might have, as I hear it quite a lot all the time, you hear, oh well, my arteries, they're all blocked up, and so that's a common one, blocked arteries. Angina, loss of breath, you can't breathe enough to get enough oxygen in. The list goes on and on. There's so many of these common illnesses. And the antidote in the modern standard model is to be given drugs. So I see when I pass a pharmacy, I see quite often there'll be a long line any time of the day from when it opens, and I see people, if I'm there early, passing early, even before the pharmacy's open, there'll be people queuing for their drugs. So yes, this video, you might say that I sound biased, but this is the bias system, and it's based on a diet that is causing you to become unwell, making you sick. I would call it food poisoning. You're poisoning yourself every day, and it's because of the standard Western diet, which is a diet based on animal products. And I'm sure all you ever get told is, well, your sickness is just because you're not having enough. So you need more fat and you need more protein, and you will eventually lose weight and get healthy. But if you need help, you'll be given drugs. So this system leads to people becoming more unhealthy, more sick. That means that they then they're told, well, they need more of what they've eaten because they just haven't had enough. And when that doesn't work, you then develop these chronic diseases and comorbidities, which you then are given prescription drugs for, which you every week or every year you maybe add another one on, and then another one on, and another drug on, until you've got dozens and dozens of drugs. So for example, if you're in your 40s and 50s, you might already be on 6 or 7 drugs, and then by the time you're 70, you may be on 12 or 15 drugs, and then by the time, yes, it eventually will come to a head, and yes, your health will suffer. And this is the standard model that we see. Okay. So that might sound like a lot to take in, and I can understand that you'd think, well, if I'm going to a dietitian, they're going to help me. They're going to save my health. They're going to allow me to live a more healthy, fulfilling life. Because it's based on people who are clever who went to university. All people that go to university do is they just learn what's in a textbook. Then they see you once they've got their degree, and they just regurgitate what they were told. And this is where it comes from. It comes from funding from the food industry, big pharma, and I'm like, there are a few dietitians. Most dietitians won't tell you this because they probably don't even realize it, and they don't even know what they're speaking or telling you is wrong, is bad for your health. Okay, so I'm going to tell you now how. I say it's not conspiracy, sadly, it's reality. So I'm going to show you now how you can save your health, okay? And this is based on the unbiased, so not based on greed. So this, Understanding Foundations, I say part 1, this is based on greed, a system of greed. How can we generate as much money as we can from a sick population? So there's no money, is there, in a population that's healthy? So for example, we know that excess dietary fat and protein, but essentially excess dietary fat, leads to insulin resistance, and so you become pre-diabetic, and eventually you become type 2 diabetic, and it's excess dietary fat. And I've got other videos on the channel explaining the science behind what I say, because most things that you will hear me say will be counter to popular beliefs, the belief system. And I test what I talk about and what I say on myself. So, talking about the alternative, I am not unhealthy based on the diet that I recommend, okay? So like and subscribe to find out the diet that I recommend, okay? So I'm 5'11", and at time of making this video, I weigh around 63 or 64 kilos, based on a diet that does not include calorie counting or starvation. It does not include these. I eat as much of the foods that I recommend, as much to feel full. And I'm not on type 2 diabetes drugs like metformin, for example. Okay? And I'm not, as I say, I'm not fat, as you probably can see from my face at least. And I've got other videos showing more of my body, but you can have a look at the channel if you're interested in that. It's family friendly channel, okay? So this channel, Life Bikes, Bananas and Spikes, this channel is based on science, population studies, so these two are linked, and my own personal experience, putting the knowledge that I've learned into practice and seeing the results and getting the results that I want. That is to be lean and healthy, look good and feel good and retain my health, and thinking about longevity. So all of these things are important, aren't they? So for example, setting up the science behind what I talk about, I have to go back quite often and look at studies and science that was done before the big pharma industry existed. So for example, an amazing piece of science that I look at and base my food recommendations, diet recommendations on, is science done by a scientist called Walter Kempner. So starting in 1939, and I've got other videos on this, but just briefly to explain one of the key foundations to my understanding. And I say, you'll put my own personal experience, and I know this works because I'm a human being just like you. So if it works for me, this will work for you. He created the rice diet. So he was looking at, well, this was before drugs existed, essentially, weight loss drugs and high blood pressure drugs and whatnot. So he created a diet based on rice, fruit, and sugar. Yes, white table sugar. In 1939, over at Duke University in North Carolina, and treated people with malignant high blood pressure, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, and essentially he reversed all of these chronic diseases that eventually, with the people that they had weeks or months left to live in some cases, and saved their lives based on diet therapy that was unbiased from the normal donor system that leads to, so this is a normal system, this is the greed system, that leads to textbooks being written that don't provide information that will help you. And population studies. So when I say population studies, I mean we look at the world and we look at essentially the way that we're living in at the moment is like a scientific experiment. And when I say that, I mean we have essentially the Western world, so the Western diet, and we're exporting that around the world. But there still is places in the world that haven't yet been touched by the standard Western diet, which is high fat, high protein, animal based diet of, as I say, cheese, milk, steak, eggs, bacon. And we can compare like a control. So in science we have a group of people that we keep the same, and then we change. We have another group that we change their diet and we see the difference. So for example, when we look at populations in rural China, an amazing study, the largest population study that we have, it's called the China study, and this was done almost 40 years ago now, in the 70s and 80s, and they looked at people lived on the same diet essentially that people have lived on in rural China for millennia, which is essentially a diet based on white rice. And they found in these places that they didn't suffer from the same illnesses that we're suffering from foods that were recommended by our dietitians and what most people eat, which is the standard Western diet, as I already outlined. So they don't suffer from these incredibly high levels of people who have. So for example, at the moment, 50% of people who are going to die, for example, this year, will die from heart disease. And they, in parts where they don't, they live on white rice as their staple. But they were looking at about 1.5% or so of the population, 1.5%, were dying from heart disease. That's crazy, isn't it? That's crazy. Almost 50 times more. And they didn't suffer from other chronic illnesses like high blood pressure or constipation. And they didn't suffer from the diseases of the arteries, narrowing of the arteries. All of these standard sort of illnesses that we see now. And it's based on the diet. So you can go and look that up. I'll do other videos. Perhaps by the time you've seen this, you'll be able to see my video on more on that. And yeah, so there are billions of people that still haven't been touched by this standard model, who don't suffer from all of the diseases that we see, that I keep saying that we keep dying from, because we're being poisoned by the standard model. And that's why you can't listen to your dietitian most of the time. Okay? And I say my own personal experience, I don't suffer from any of these diseases. I'm not overweight. I'm not type 2 diabetic. I'm not constipated. I don't get bowel problems. And I don't have atherosclerosis and high blood pressure. I don't have chronic fatigue. And this is based on a diet that I recommend of rice, fruit, and white table sugar. Okay? Rice, fruit, and sugar. Rice, fruit, sugar, rice, fruit, sugar. We'll keep saying it until I'm blue in the face. Okay? And this is based on, say, the science that's unbiased. And we have lots of evidence to show that a plant-based diet focusing on a staple of white rice and sugar and fruit. And when I say sugar as well, I do mean white table sugar, but rice and fruit is a high sugar diet, okay? And the places that we say we look at population studies where they live on a high sugar diet. So quite often, even if you switch over from the animal foods and you switch over to the plant-based diets, people who are promoting this sort of diet therapy, so food to make you healthy, the plant-based scene, these doctors and nutritionists, they will say not to have white table sugar because sugar is bad for you. But they don't explain, and I'll make other videos if it confuses you, but rice and fruit are sugars. Okay, when we talk about carbohydrates, all carbohydrates are sugar. Okay, so the brain, all of the organs in the body, your immune system, your red blood cells, they all use sugar. They all run on sugar. Their fuel is sugar. Okay? Just the basic science, glycolysis, and then is your primary energy system, glycolysis. So that's producing ATP from glucose in the cytoplasm of your cell, and then in the mitochondria of your cells, then oxidative phosphorylation, we produce more ATP from glucose. Okay, so this is the primary energy system, essentially, is glycolysis though. Okay, you're making ATP. So everything is about making ATP. Okay. And if you're eating like this standard diet, for example, you're eating steak, there isn't any sugar in steak. So you might have heard of ketosis. So this is a medical term that we use to describe ill health or disease, so dis-ease in the body. It's a term for disease in the body, because the primary energy system is making ATP. So all of life in your body, the reason why you're alive is because you're producing ATP. And if you don't produce ATP from sugars, you make it from fats and proteins, and that is gluconeogenesis. So you still need sugar, and it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter, because this diet doesn't lead to you having all of these chronic illnesses that we see in the West. There's a divide in the world where people eat like this meaty diet because of, and the reason why these foods are promoted is because these are the most expensive foods. Okay, so the most expensive foods that we see are these foods, so animal agriculture foods, products from animals. Rice that I promote. Rice is the cheapest food, staple food on the planet. Okay? So just think, you can get, if you look for offers, I always recommend getting the biggest bag of rice you can. You can get a 10-kilo bag, and I've bought it before from my local supermarket in the UK. When there's been offers on, I've been able to buy a 10-kilo bag of white rice for under £15. And just think how long potentially that how many meals that's going to allow you to live on. So you could live on the staple of 3 meals a day from 10 kilos of rice, just for example, for one person, for weeks and months. And you could buy one steak for £15 for one meal. I mean, just think how much more money there is in animal products. So I hope you enjoyed the video and it makes sense, okay? So that the only reason why this occurs is to generate more money. So this way of eating makes the population sick, which means that they have to spend more money. So they're spending more money on foods that are more expensive rather than rice. And yeah, fruit can be expensive, but it's only going to be as expensive essentially as foods that are poisoning you. I mean, there isn't any cholesterol in rice and fruit and sugar, and the body can make its own. And you're dumping, for example, all of this cholesterol from all these foods, from these other animals. You're stripping the cholesterol from these animal bodies and dumping it in your body. Okay, so if you think about this once you break through the matrix. So I'm like Neo in the Matrix, and I'm here to save you. Or perhaps if you're religious, I'm your guardian angel, okay? Spreading light on the darkness. So why life, bikes, bananas and spice? Well, life, I'm here to give you life. Bikes, I recommend cycling. It's the only true freedom and adventure that you can get in your life. In the prison system that we live in, especially in the West, where money is the only thing that's important, and that's the only thing that people care about, more so than their health. Okay? Plutocracy is not the way to go. Okay? Bananas, fruit, perhaps I might add rice. I might change the name of the channel and add rice in there. So yeah, fruit, save your life. And spice. Add spice to every day. And yes, I like to cook with spice and add spice to my day whenever I can. Okay, so this is the premise of my recommendations. Essentially is taking back your health through diet therapy. Prevent the disease, the cancers, the heart disease before they come for you. Before you have them, you can eat in a way based on the staples of rice, fruit and sugar. And I've got other videos explaining more the nuance to it, and how much should I eat of this and of rice, and to feel full and lose weight and gain health. But you can stop getting cancer and heart disease and atherosclerosis by preventing them being developed in the first place. Okay? And it's diet. And we know this by just looking at the world. There are places that people do not suffer from these diseases that I keep mentioning. So I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you've got any questions, put them in the comments. And I understand that, yeah, it's a bit of a difficult topic, because a lot of people probably have a dietitian and probably if you're a dietitian watching this video, you'll totally disagree with what I've said. But as I say, this is a series of videos helping you to break free from the prison of the standard diet and the standard model. Okay, so I'll hold these up and we'll be able to, perhaps you could recreate these and show your friends and your family. And yes, it might be difficult, because this is what we're told, isn't it? This is what we're told. Just keep eating more fat and more protein, and then if that doesn't work, cut out the sugar, and if that doesn't work, drugs. And you'll be on drugs from when you're in your 20s. You can develop type 2 diabetes in your 20s. And type 2 diabetes is completely reversible through diet. Okay? And type 1 is caused by diet as well. Mostly. Yes, there can be genetic problems, but it's mostly caused by the links now we see between dairy and type 1. Okay? So like and subscribe. And yes, I'll put up videos to substantiate the things that I say, like the link between our diet and all of these diseases, because I don't suffer from them. And if you eat like the way that I recommend, you may be able to break free and stop taking from the shackles of the big pharma, and stop taking all of your medications, reduce your medications, and regain your health. So I think I covered everything in this first part 1. Part 2, just be continuing to explain how you can free yourself from the prison and regain your innocence. Okay, you're innocent until proven guilty, and in this case you weren't guilty. The people who are guilty, and they are guilty, is this: will they ever pay for their crimes? I don't know. I don't think they will, unfortunately. Unfortunately, those, as we say, we live in a plutocracy, so those who have money make the rules, sadly enough. But yeah. So like and subscribe, and I'll see you for part 2. And if you're not watching part 2, so by the time you watch this video, I might have had all of the series done, so you can just watch them through and sit back as though it's a movie and just watch them all the way through. But if you don't want to do that, I've got other videos on the channel explaining how to lose weight and gain health. So my primary focus is weight loss, but I also talk about cycling and freedom and adventure and saving money and all of these good healthy things. Okay. So I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for your time. I hope your brain didn't explode. Okay. Ciao. See you in the next one.